I humbly request Mr. Amitabh Kant, ex-G20 Sherpa and former CEO, Niti Ayog, Government of India, to please come up on stage and give us the keynote address. Please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Amitabh Kant.
Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Venkatesh, Mr. Tuhin Pandey, the chairman of SEBI, who's brought a lot of predictability, consistency, and positivity to the functioning of SEBI, Mr. Pandey, Mr. Amarjit Singh, Mr. Barua, Mr. Rao, all the distinguished guests, Pallavi, all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me congratulate the Association of InvITs and REITs for organizing this event. And for firstly, having an association to take InvITs and REITs forward. This is a very, very progressive step that the industry has got together for the first time. It's important because, to my mind, if India, which is today a $4 trillion economy, has to be, as the Prime Minister said, to become a $30+ trillion economy by the time it becomes 147. Now, this is a very ambitious task. This means that your GDP has to grow 9x, your per capita income has to grow 8x, your manufacturing has to grow 16x, but your infrastructure has to grow over 20x of what it is now. And this is simply because 50% of India is still to be built. And this is a very, very challenging task. And my belief is that this cannot be done without the models of financial innovation, which would help create sustainable infrastructure development in India. My belief also is that the next phase of India's growth will be shaped by how effectively India mobilizes long-term capital and how well it leverages very, very innovative financing instruments such as REITs and InvITs, and how progressively it is backed by SEBI as well as all the government ministries. Globally, if you look at it, REITs and InvITs represent almost a $4 trillion market, and this is largely led by US, it's led by Germany, it's led by Japan. And my belief is that actually, given the potential of growth of India, given the potential of our ambition to be a $30+ trillion economy, and given that these are countries, Japan, Germany, US have already been built, and India has to be built, the InvITs and REITs market should be led by India. And given the size and scale of infrastructure available in India, all the growth and future of InvITs and REITs should happen from India. As was said, India has about 27 registered InvITs across 9 sectors with assets under management of 7 lakh crores, which is about $81 billion. To my mind, this is absolutely minuscule, given the scale which India has to offer, and very, very minuscule. And India has already positioned itself as a world-leading infrastructure investment destination. We've opened up investment across the sector, but we should be very, very ambitious in our targets and be bold in our approach as far as InvITs and REITs is concerned. And many of you are sitting here who lead InvITs and REITs, need to make sure that India becomes the world's #1 in InvITs and REITs market. And we should really, our target should be to reach $1 trillion. And that should be the ambition of this meeting, $1 trillion on 90 lakh crores, which is 13 to 15x of where we are right now. My view is that we are actually slowing down our potential because we are making very many costly mistakes in this process. Firstly, we must be very careful when it comes to valuation. Optimistic, early assumptions, mixed quality asset portfolio, and high sensitivity to rising interest rates sometimes reduces distribution attractiveness and triggers capital outflows, while fiscal pressures often lead sponsors to front lead or bundle assets without adequate clarity on future capex or regulatory stability. And this ultimately undermines investor confidence and market performance. And this is very critical to my mind. Secondly, of the 27 InvITs established in India, only 2 of them are owned and sponsored by the public sector. Now, if public sector in India owns 70%, 70 to 75% of the country's infrastructure is owned by the public sector in India. NHAI, Power Grid, all this. They should be rolling out InvITs and REITs, and they should actually be pushing for just 2 out of the InvITs and REITs are by the public sector. 75% of the infrastructure is owned by them. And therefore, this gap is by the public sector is strikingly poor. Several sectors, particularly railways and warehousing, have a massive public sector footprint and could readily monetize or utilize their asset base. While some of them, like NHAI, have done very well in expanding and scaling in its InvITs offers, Power Grid has not been able to grow their asset under management or add successive assets at the same pace. The first asset under management for this InvIT was done by Power Grid, but after that it has not moved forward. And this is because in some cases, asset owners and public sector entities have tried to retain operational control even after forming InvITs. This meant a lack of independent price discovery for assets being added to an existing InvIT. And public sectors must realize that this has to be done in a professional way at arm's length. It is critical to have a professionally run and independently managed board at the investment manager level. This becomes especially important in situations where the buyer and seller, the InvIT and the asset owning public sector entity are effectively controlled by the same sponsor. This diluted governance, and this I'm blaming the public sector, this diluted governance actually undermines independence and reduces investor confidence. And these mistakes cannot happen again and again. And to avoid repeating them, we need very, very strict discipline, because India is a market which is going to grow and progress. It is going to prosper over a period of time. Once assets move into InvIT or REIT, the management must be fully independent. Public sector must establish independent investment managers and move away from creating InvIT public sector units. Thirdly, a central concern is the lack of a large, predictable, multi-year asset pipeline, especially from the public sector. A lot has been done in infrastructure pipeline, asset monetization pipeline, while the National Monetization Pipeline articulates intent, actual transfer into InvIT-like structures remains a fraction of the potential in roads, power, railways, and urban utilities. There is no shortage of global money. There is $300 trillion available globally. There's just no shortage of money. You talk to Temasek, you talk to sovereign wealth funds, there's no shortage of money. There is a shortage of well-structured InvITs and REITs projects to be able to attract money from across the world. And I would repeat that The shortage is in well-prepared assets and efficient structures to attract money from across the world into India. And if India wants to lead the world in InvITs and REITs, all ministries of Government of India must actually shift from being custodians of assets to becoming very major enablers of investments for India to become a Viksit Bharat. SEBI has done a lot for InvITs and REITs. It's made some very progressive moves forward. But it's very important that the Government of India's ministries must move away from being absolute owners of assets to becoming enablers of investment. Custodians hold assets, enablers unlock value, and the government ministries must start unlocking value. They must determine clear sectoral contribution and create pipelines right away. And to my mind, if India's target is 1 trillion, we need about $250 billion from power transmission and renewables. We need $200 billion from roads. We need about $150 billion from logistics and digital infrastructure. We need $200 billion from urban utilities and metro systems, and another $200 billion from commercial real estate and brownfield portfolios. This is the only way for India to grow, and this is the only way to attract investments. This is the only way for India to become a Viksit Bharat through InvITs and REITs. And ministry should focus on preparing pipelines, ensuring approvals and ensuring clean structures and not influencing commercial decisions. Global investors will invest only when they see InvITs run very professionally and very transparently. I also feel that the state governments have a major role to play. They must adopt a unified and time-bound asset monetization framework, and they must push for InvITs and REITs. Multi-year pipelines must clearly identify transport, power, distribution, logistics, tourism. All these sectors are capable of REITs and InvIT structures, and I would request you to hold similar conferences with state chief ministers and state secretaries in major states of India. Municipal bodies should be encouraged to pool revenue-generating assets such as terminals, metro systems, water treatment plants, parking facilities, and commercial markets into city-level REITs and InvITs. This will allow cities to mobilize long-term capital and ensure that Indian cities are better managed. We must also commit to a stable 10-year tax and regulatory roadmap for InvITs and REITs. This commitment specifically avoiding any kind of retrospective tweaks to distribution and capital gains. And this is important because we need to send out a clear signal to global strategic investment. Ladies and gentlemen, my view is also that reliable currency hedging mechanisms are critical for attracting global institutional investors. And greater predictability will unlock substantially large pool of long-term foreign capital. Today, foreign investors account for more than 50% of institutional investments in InvITs. Domestic institutional investments such as mutual funds, pension funds, banks, insurance company contribute only 7%. Our ambition must be to take it from 7% to close to about 25%, and domestic sponsors contribute about 21% of investment in InvITs, while retail participation is only around 5% and presents substantial room for growth. Now, InvITs have consistently raised funding at very competitive rates. This has enabled them to retire expensive and high-structured project debt. We must understand that they support the development of local capital markets by creating very reliable infrastructure securities and broadening the investor base. This is critical for India's growth. Global trends are showing that the next growth in InvITs and REITs will come from InvITs expanding into digital infrastructure, urban utilities, renewable energy storage, and city-level asset platforms. India has the asset base to lead these segments, and what is now needed is huge speed by India. To my mind, India can become the world's #1 InvITs and REITs market, but only if government, ministries, all of us together act with urgency and speed. The world is ready to invest. India must be ready to receive that investment. This also requires InvITs and REITs to be emboldened as a central pillar, as a very, very central pillar of our fiscal and infrastructure strategy, not a sideline. Future frameworks must clearly identify, particularly the asset monetization pipeline, must clearly identify what is systematically monetized via trusts and what is funded by other means. A 1 trillion vision for InvITs and REITs is entirely achievable if the model is expanded across sectors. For instance, railway alone could form a very significant share of future InvIT assets. They are almost completely absent today. The future we prepare and release assets, the faster we prepare and release assets, the faster India will move towards the $1 trillion goal of Viksit Bharat vision. So my view is that India's story in the 21st century will be defined by the infrastructure it builds and the confidence it inspires. The country is ready to seize this opportunity, and I'm really glad that Tuhin Pandey is here because he's a very positive force. He's a positive force by nature, and therefore he will really ensure that there is great predictability, consistency, clarity of policies, and all of us must really ensure, all of us sitting in this room, across central governments, state governments, all should push out products into the market to enable India to emerge as a global leader in sustainable, innovative, and resilient development through InvITs and REITs. I congratulate the organizers of this conference, and I congratulate all of you, particularly SEBI, which has taken a lead role in this, in driving this movement for InvITs and REITs. InvITs and REITs are the future. InvITs and REITs are the future for unlocking India's growth. InvITs and REITs are the future for taking India from $4 trillion to a $30 trillion economy. Thank you very much.